Elves Orcs Dwarves Wizards Limited. A short story by PJ Leonard. Part 2. The first thing I want to say is this. I think you're all awesome, said Maximus, flashing a pristine white grin across the room. You are awesome, and so are you. Oh, and especially you. He pointed at Leon, and Leon's chest swelled. Tim raised an eyebrow. But we have a problem here, Maximus went on. We're not showing the world our awesomeness. Elves, Orcs, Dwarves and Wizards Limited is a fantastic company, but the trouble is so many other equally fantastic companies out there have caught you up. I suppose you've all heard of Surrealism PLC. An audible hiss rippled through the meeting, started, no doubt, by Jimmy, who had an actual snake's head. Yes, the darlings of the industry right now, Maximus went on. Fresh, innovative, and forward-looking. And although we know differently, to everyone else, Elves, Orcs, Dwarves and Wizards Limited is a company stuck in the past. And we need to show them that that is not the case. We will show the world that we are a company looking firmly to the future. Get on with it, lad, Bruce barked. Half of the room swung around to look at the dwarf, including Maximus, who smoothed back his hair. His smile didn't leave his face. Ah, perfect timing, said Maximus. Mr. Dwarf, could you come up to the front, please? And bring your 3 friends with you. Bruce led Lucy, Tim, and Eva to the front of the meeting room. Thank you, said Maximus, without looking at any of them. Well, what a fitting coincidence. 4 employees who represent the namesake of this company. Well, I want to ask this, everyone. Look at these 4 people. What do you see? A pause. Then a tiny hand raised above the sea of heads. 4 people who want to sit down? Laughter. Maximus's grin didn't fall, but it looked like it was becoming increasingly painful to keep it there. I see potential, he said. 4 hard-working people who have been so used to doing the same thing every day that their eyes are focused firmly on their desk instead of where they should be. And where should I be looking then? Said Tim. The clock? I'm counting down the seconds to lunch right now. The future, said Maximus, poking Tim in the chest. I'll be blunt, everyone. You're having an image crisis. As Alan said, we need to get with the times, update ourselves, show the world who is worth their time and money for all of their fiction world-building needs. So, what's the first thing that should go? Eva glared at Maximus and crossed her arms. I have an idea, she growled. Maximus turned away, looking at Lucy. Your weapons, my friends. Bows, wands, swords, axes, tools of a bygone age. Would my 4 friends mind laying them down on the floor? They all grumbled as they lay down their weapons on the carpet. Even Lucy was slow to let go of her trusty bow. Well, now what? Said Tim irritably. These so-called weapons are a part of who we are, Mr. Maximus. What are we supposed to do without them? Replace them with something modern, said Maximus, and with a clap of his hands, a crate rose from out of the floor, just like he had. Guns! A stunned silence fell on the room as Maximus rummaged through the crate. Forget your steel and iron handhelds, people. I'm dragging our fantasy tropes into the here and now. I'm talking elves with submachine guns, dwarves with assault rifles. And so, Maximus talked the silent room through his plan to transform the company's image into hard-boiled action heroes and set them apart from the rest of the market. Elves, Orcs, Dwarves and Wizards was to reboot with a new logo with lettering that looked like steel shot through with bullet holes, and a new TV commercial that was to air on primetime TV that evening. In fact, let's have a preview of that commercial, shall we? Hit the lights, Alan. The projector suddenly blared fire and explosions on the wall.
Introducing the new bad boys of fiction,
a gravelly narrator declared, followed by another explosion and an orc hurling a grenade over a wall.
You've tried the best, now try the baddest.
A dwarf whipping off a pair of sunglasses, an elf clicking a red button and setting off more explosions, and a wizard walking in slow motion away from another explosion, not looking back, gun propped on his shoulder and chewing on a cigar.
Elves, Orcs, Dwarves, and Wizards,
said the narrator.
Fantasy with more fire.
The screen went black, and the lights came up again. Lucy's ears rang after all of the noise with the silence that was as still as if the meeting room was empty. Speechless, I see! Ha ha! Maximus laughed. You must be as excited about this as I am. Bruce held his gun tightly, but Lucy laid a hand on his shoulder, giving an understanding nod to the dwarf. The meeting broke up as everyone stood up and floated back to their desks, listless as zombies. Tim shot a glance at Alan, who immediately looked away. Maximus had mysteriously disappeared, gone as quickly as he had arrived. This is madness, said Bruce, slumping back at his desk. What on earth are they thinking? That commercial. Tim closed his eyes as though reimagining it. We're going to be a laughingstock, I know it. I'm sure we can all agree that there is a problem in our company, said Lucy calmly. But this doesn't look like the right direction to go, does it? Wow, said Bruce, grinning. Well, when even Lucy criticizes something, you know it's a problem, right, Eva?
This is the most stupid thing I've ever seen,
the orc growled.
And that's saying something. I've worked with other orcs.
Sure enough, that evening the commercial aired, and the internet erupted with overwhelming ridicule. The hashtag Dwarf with a Gun trended on Twitter within mere minutes of the commercial, and people were already editing photos of the bearded wizard onto the bodies of muscle-bound action heroes. One thing was for certain, it had certainly gained attention. The next day, Lucy arrived in the office early as usual to find the answer machines full of messages. She raised an arched eyebrow. Maybe this new image had worked after all. She pressed play on the first message. Oh, yes, hi. I saw your new commercial last night. I think your wizards would go perfectly with my new TV series idea. Swords and sniper rifles. The caller could no longer hold herself and descended into fits of laughter before the message cut off. Lucy listened to each and every message, and not a single one of them was a real order. Some messages were just pure laughter from beginning to end. Some were openly angry, declaring themselves as once loyal customers that would never order from them again. And by the time the rest of the office had filled up, the phone calls coming in were no better. Yes, sir, I understand, said Bruce, hunched over the phone. I sympathise with your predicament, I really do, sir. But I'm looking at our order catalogue online now, and there is no option to place orders for dark overlords with mind-reading abilities anymore. Only napalm. Hello? Sir? Oh, he hung up. Bruce slammed down the phone. I couldn't blame him, to be honest. Who in their right mind would order from us now? Who wants a troll who wields a chainsaw? Give it time, said Lucy. It's a shock to the system, sure, but people always struggle to accept new things. Give it some time. And sure enough, the furious and prank phone calls did die down. But no serious orders replaced them. For the next 2 weeks, only a couple of small orders were placed for student projects, and although the commercial had ceased to be the most ridiculed thing on the internet, having moved on to the latest celebrity scandal, nobody was taking this action-packed reboot seriously. Those kids were outside my house again this morning, Tim grumbled one day as he entered the office, pretending to shoot each other and blow my car up. They're just kids, Tim, said Lucy.
And I'm just trying to make a living,
Tim snapped.
I don't need 10-year-olds mocking me every time I step out of the office. Actually, no, it's not just kids. I went to the corner shop the other day to buy some milk. Do you know what the owner said to me? He said, "Is this a stick-up, Tim? Because milk isn't as scary as an Uzi."
Lucy said nothing, only quietly nodded. While everyone else in the office complained loudly about the rebranding, she kept quietly to herself. Finally, one morning, she arrived in the office at 8:45 a.m. Everyone stared as she took her seat.
"What time do you call this?"
Bruce said with a grin.
"A normal time?"
"Don't." Lucy gave Bruce such a look that even the dwarf dropped his smile.
"What's the problem?"
said Eva. "My bow," said Lucy. "Maximus and Alan spoke to me last night before I left. They've taken my bow away, said it's not part of the company image anymore. They gave me this instead." Lucy reached down to the side of her desk and pulled out a crossbow. She held it at arm's length, nose wrinkled as though it were a particularly smelly bag of trash. "I carved that bow myself," said Lucy, her cheeks flushing red. "I've had it for years, and now they say it's no good because it doesn't fit this gaudy, misinformed rebranding." Tim and Eva and Bruce looked at one another. They'd never heard Lucy speak like this before. It was like a tempest rising out of a calm lake. "Enough of this," Lucy said, slamming the crossbow on the desk and rising from her seat. "I'm going to have a word with Alan, now. This rebranding stops here. If anybody else agrees with me, then follow me." She walked across the office. One by one, the rest of the office stood up and followed her towards Alan's private office. End of part 2.